I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
I'm Holly.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 53rd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. And tonight we are finally talking about Star Trek Discovery again. We have the Season 2 premiere episode, Brother.
Woohoo. Big stuff.
It was a long wait, but it finally came. And me and Dave are joined with Brian, who has been on the show before, and along with his wife, Holly.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, always the more the merrier. But yeah, so tonight's episode, Brother, it was directed by Alex Kurtzman himself and written by Ted Sullivan and the ex-showrunners Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts. But I just want to quickly give everyone a chance to give some opening thoughts on just very generally how you felt about this episode. So I'll just kick things off myself. I loved it. There are still some little problems with Discovery that bug me, and it's just me getting used to this new era of Star Trek made by new people, and they just do some things a little bit differently.
Right, it's like your mind has to kind of like lock back on to like their way of doing things since there's been decades of other Trek.
Right. But like I always talk about how there's different regimes of Star Trek, and you had the Berman era for a long time, and you had the original, Roddenberry era, and now we have the, I guess, Alex Kurtzman at this point, CBS All Access era, and they definitely change up the tone a little bit opening season 2, and it's a lighter tone. It's a lot of fun though, and it makes me really excited for this season. But Dave, what about yourself?
I had a really good time with it, with a few caveats too. That I think this episode was setting up a lot of different plot lines, and so some of those ones I feel like I'm not going to be able to necessarily comment on until I somewhat see how they're playing out a little bit more. But a lot of different things going on. Weirdly, the thing I think I liked most about it was one of the things I liked most about the 2009 Abrams Trek movie, which was like its energy and kind of can-do, kind of TOS style can-do attitude, and crew synergy and all that stuff. So odds and ends parts that didn't work, still figuring out some of the mysteries of it, and like obviously that's going to be the whole thing of the season, some of these mysteries, but getting a sense of where they'll be going next. But I'm going to overall say I liked it quite a bit.
Cool. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of felt like a 60-minute long hook, and you kind of feel almost like you should get the Discovery music playing at the end of it, as like we're going in.
That was the 5-minute teaser.
Yeah, that was the 5-minute teaser, which, I guess they're cutting it down. It was 2 episodes last season.
Right.
Now it's only 1. But as a hook, I'm intrigued. I'm excited. I honestly have no real complaints at all, no significant complaints about the episode of any real substance, at least on first viewing. I don't think they did a whole lot of things right that I was thinking they were going to mess it up, and then they didn't all the way through, so I was very pleased.
I really enjoyed it. I'm not one of those nerds that gets nerd rage, so I actually like when my shows get new angles, new possibilities, new people come in, and I'll give them a chance. And for instance, I'm a Doctor Who fan, and I was an old school Doctor Who fan, still am, but there are things I like better about New Who, and so I give them all an open. I give all of it an open chance, and I really liked it. And one thing that I really appreciated about season 1 of Discovery was that while we had dark places and went into that brooding area and the dark that we do in a lot of modern storytelling, we also kind of had a story of redemption by the end. And I really liked that we could do both dark and light with the same characters and not just stay in the dark place, because I think that's what some of our cynical TV has lacked in the past.
Right on. Well, I'm just going to go through a warp speed summary of the episode just to recap it for everyone out there. So, this episode picks up right where season 1 ended. The starships Discovery and Enterprise are face-to-face. Captain Pike beams aboard the Disco with 2 of his Enterprise officers. Burnham and Sarek both present, expecting to see Spock, but he's nowhere to be seen. More on that in a bit. Pike explains that there's been 7 red bursts suddenly explode in space, and they've all vanished but one. The Enterprise tried to scan the remaining red burst, but the computer went haywire, and now all the systems on the Enterprise are on the fritz. So Pike, who is a total awesome Starfleet captain, who seems like he would be a great boss, is taking command of Discovery under Starfleet orders.
That's a lot of editorializing in your summary there, but I agree.
That's how I do it.
All right. Continue.
They shoot over to the location of the red burst, and they, instead of finding a big red thing, there's a big space rock giving off weird gravitational waves. The crew discovers a crashed Starfleet medical frigate, the Hiawatha, stranded on the surface. They want to go down and check for survivors, but the rock is going to collide with the pulsar in a few hours and be destroyed. Pike and his 2 officers and Burnham fly some weird little spinny landing pod vehicles. They go through an asteroid debris field, and they make it to the surface, everyone except for the science officer from the Enterprise, who had been a total prick to Burnham. But everyone else survives. They find Tig Notaro's character, engineer Jet Reno, who is awesome. She's alive on the Hiawatha and is keeping some of the patients alive down there. And Pike and Burnham get everyone beamed up to the Discovery. Burnham gets hurt in the process, though. She gets hit with some super hot shrapnel in the leg. And as she's laying there, apparently moments from death, and everything's going to shit as the whole asteroid is falling apart and exploding, she sees a strange, red, angelic creature. It's hard to make out. But we know from the promotional material is the Red Angel. It's going to be a big deal in this season. However, that image fades away. We see Chris Pike, because he doesn't leave no man behind or no woman behind, and he rescues Burnham right in the nick of time. They get back on board the Disco. Burnham gets healed up. They load the shuttle bay up with some of the weird space rock to study later. Pike ends up staying on the ship to co-captain with Saru and lead the mission to continue this investigation. Burnham learns that Spock has gone on a leave of absence from Starfleet, and she very shadily kind of breaks into his quarters on the Enterprise without permission, listens to his personal log, totally invading his privacy, and she learns that
again with the editorialization.
Well, actually, I noticed that too.
That's a problem.
Real quick, I'm going to interrupt for just 1 second.
The whole
I
point
get the
of
impression she had permission to go maybe on board the ship, and maybe even into his quarters.
And into his personal logs?
Probably not that stuff.
Dave, the whole point of having the warp speed summaries this year was so that you wouldn't interrupt my summaries.
It's too bad. It's too bad.
You can't be the only one who editorializes.
That's right.
I'll give everyone a chance, but essentially she learns that Spock has been having nightmares of the 7 red bursts, and he left to likely go have his own investigation. And that is how the episode ends. And so I have just some topics that we can talk about. I think the first one that we should address, it has to be Captain Pike.
So, not the fortune cookie?
Well, we'll get into that. But yeah, so what did everyone think of Captain Pike? This is the first time we've seen Anson Mount as Pike, a character who has been in Star Trek a couple times before. What do y'all think of the new take on him?
Dangerously close to stealing the show. I really liked him, and he was he kind of comes in like a wrecking ball of charisma, sort of onto the ship, and in a way that I really liked. but like, there was a part of me that was like, is he stepping on this? Is, that also goes back to the previous season. Is he going to step on Saru's toes or even Burnham's toes as far as kind of stealing the show's spotlight? I like him. I like him a lot. He seems like he's very what's this word? He's both can do but also chill. He's actually not goes out of his way to not step on the toes of people around him.
He doesn't order the women off the bridge.
Yes, that's right.
That's some improvement over the Jeffrey Hunter Pike.
Yes.
Right. What did y'all think?
I liked him. I mean, he seemed like a pretty decent character to me. I did not remember the original show that much, other than I remember, of course, him sitting in the chair only doing the yes, no.
Right. Boop, boop. This, I think, owes a lot to Bruce Greenwood's performance in the 2009 movies.
I would definitely agree. I definitely I feel like I'm watching the Bruce Greenwood Pike. Not that I'm complaining. I like that.
He was one of the stronger characters, I think, in there.
I actually like the Anson Mount Pike more than the Bruce Greenwood Pike.
Yeah.
Because they and a lot of it's just in the writing here, but like they took the time to give him just more little character beats. Like when he steps on the bridge and he has to do the DNA verification. And he's kind of like joking around with Tilly, who seems kind of like almost weirdly starstruck by this guy.
Well, so wasn't he on the list?
Yeah, he was on the list for like the most highly decorated captains in Starfleet history.
It's funny, the way they portray Tilly is she's obviously very capable, but it seems like she, sometimes her game face slips. And she just, and that was one of those moments.
I thought, I liked him. I liked the fact that it was a little Bruce Greenwood. I liked the fact that he let the women serve on the bridge. I liked his sense of humor. Yes, he becomes a huge part of the episode, but Lorca was a huge part of each episode too. So the idea that Saru and Michael can't exist side by side with this guy, I think that I'm not worried about that at this point.
So I think part of the reason why that bugged me a little bit was that in some ways Pike as a captain in the original series was clearly sort of the Kirk, beta test. And so he is a bit of a Kirk type.
Yeah, cut from the same cloth.
Cut from the same cloth, yeah. Not exactly, but he's in that ballpark.
But that's what I wanted. That was on my wish list for season 2, is I wanted Captain Pike to bring a kind of like old school style Starfleet captain that we haven't really seen since maybe Riker,
a right stuff captain.
Yeah, I wanted him to have kind of like
stuff.
that 60s can do charisma, and kind of just like that really inspirational leader that the whole crew can fall behind and cheer for. But I didn't want him to be a copy of Shatner's Kirk or Jeffrey Hunter's Pike, and I think Anson Mount kind of owns it and does his own thing.
Yeah, though he does respond notably when his science officer buys it. They do make a moment out of that, which Pike, took the loss of crew members very heavily, certainly heavier than Kirk.
In his little small 200-person Enterprise crew.
Yeah, they kept that from the cage.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wondered if that was, I don't know if anybody will ultimately worry about, but that is a big difference between how it'll be in just a few years when Kirk takes over.
So funny you mentioned that, because they do clarify in this episode that there's 203 people on the Enterprise, which was the complement in the TOS episode, The Cage.
I think they're running lean because of the war?
Well, whereas, The Cage was, 2 years before the war. So
that's true.
But, yeah, what we know from the original series is that typically there's 400 people, or a little over 400 on the Enterprise during, the Kirk era. But in this episode, on one of the displays on the Discovery Bridge, it actually shows that there are 430 people on the Enterprise.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it says there's 430 complement, but one is missing right now, so it's 429.
Okay, that was just their it's an Easter egg about Spock.
Yeah, but they kind of goofed by putting that in there, which is sad because that's a really cool inclusion, putting this cool little background detail, but.
Yeah, I mean that's clearly just a continuity error. But I will be curious to see if they ever mention, why it was running with such a relatively skeleton crew. I think it'd be easy to come up with reasons for it, including maybe having pulled some of them even from their 5-year mission on the Outer Rim or whatever for the war effort.
Well, they said they wouldn't be able to get back in time to make the difference.
I guess that's true. Maybe as the war was ramping up, they pulled some of the officers and crew members.
The Enterprise was so damaged in this episode that it had to be hauled off to space dock. So I'm thinking it's about to get like a major refit. And maybe like they take off some of the equipment and they're like, oh yeah, like we have more space now.
We can stuff people in it now.
Yeah, we can double the crew complement.
Yeah.
How was it damaged?
Well, they don't really,
because it wasn't in the
red burst.
It wasn't in the war.
What I'm guessing happened is that they said that all the systems started malfunctioning when they scanned the red burst.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
that's a rough scan if it disables a whole ship.
Yeah, but it makes sense in what they're setting up. Is they're like, well, obviously these aren't a natural phenomena. This looks like something that someone is doing intentionally.
Right.
So
there's like, is it a signal? Is it a warning? We don't quite know.
I do hope they remember this when they do find a red burst in the future, that they shouldn't just, let's scan it.
Just imagine they're like, no.
But also, just to circle back to something that Brian mentioned a second ago about Pike, and then we can move on to something else. But about how he takes it real seriously when someone under his command dies, and that was really weighing him down in the cage. It was after the Rigel mission where he had people serving under him who beamed down and didn't beam back up, and that kind of always inspired a thing whenever there are Star Trek novels or something that uses Captain Pike.
But that was a thing for him?
Well, a lot of times he's, not only that, but he's written kind of, almost kind of like depressed, where he's like, the hardships of command, and they really focus on that.
Right.
And one of the reasons why I think the Cage doesn't work as that great of a pilot as Where No Man Has Gone Before is because it's really weird to introduce a main character, who he's like, I don't really like being here. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And I would prefer that Pike doesn't have like that default state of mind for his entire career. I like that just being like, yeah, he was having like a really bad week after.
Well, and I think that the Cage is a bit of an arc for him. By the end of it, he's realized he wants to go out and do real life and not just live in some safe fantasy land.
Yeah.
Which most of the authors kind of forgot, because they grabbed onto what they had, and what they had was, he's kind of not sure he wants to be a captain.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, wouldn't that kind of come after you've lost too many in your crew?
Yeah.
Like, maybe you accept that sometimes I'm going to lose someone, but if it seems like you've lost a lot of people, you might begin to wonder, is there something I could have done differently? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I'm not the best captain because I couldn't figure out how not to lose these people. So I don't see that necessarily being how he always is, but I could see if he faced quite a few losses, how eventually that could get to him.
Yeah. And that when you have a character who's just going to be like, every time you see him, he's just going to be like so like full of guilt and just like that's not going to be like as entertaining to watch.
Suddenly we're in Jeffrey Sinclair territory from Babylon 5.
Right.
I was at the Battle of the Line.
Actually, I think that can be entertaining, but I think it's a hard show. It's tough to build around when you want to have some energetic optimism.
Yeah, and you need to build an arc into it. Just random. This year we're doing a Captain Pike novel. You know, there wasn't much of an arc to those books, as far as I can tell. It was just randomly if somebody had an idea. I will say, as far as not being in the war was really tough for us. I really wanted Burnham to say, it was even worse if you were in the war. Just kind of.
Well, let's just say something about that. Is I hate their excuse for the Enterprise not being in the war, that they were like too far away on their 5-year mission, that they couldn't have made it back in time. It's like, well, you don't know how long this war is going to last. It could be 10 months or 10 years.
I see. Reading, this might be me giving them too much credit, but, you know, there was the talk about why Spock would say, well, why would they keep us out here if we're just going to come back to nothing? I'm like, oh, no. You were the lifeboat. You were the thing that made sure that humanity got away if everyone else died. That was what I read between the lines there. That's why they don't call the Enterprise back. Well, now, it's just me projecting that. Maybe that's not what the writers were thinking.
Here's a more optimistic take on it, maybe. It would almost have to be. Is that that because science is so foundational to the Federation and the optimistic future that Roddenberry created, the idea would be that you also never know what's going to come from it, that having a ship out there exploring the unknown, finding new things, is actually could be just as valuable an asset. They can't send a lot of them out, but their flagship, or one of their flagship types, could actually ultimately do just as much for them if they, if they discover something new, make an alliance, who knows what.
Well, Starfleet's still young. They haven't learned that you take whenever there's a problem, you drop the Enterprise on it. They haven't figured that out yet.
That's right. Lots of problems solved out there, not a lot at home.
What I would have done that I think would have worked better and still would have explained their absence during the war is I would have borrowed something from Star Trek First Contact and have said the Enterprise was patrolling the Romulan neutral zone to make sure the Romulans didn't try to take advantage of the Klingon Federation war and tried to annex some Federation territory.
I think it didn't bother me at all. I thought it was a reasonable, quick explanation that also allowed for to drop the 5-year mission concept back on the table again, just to remind you that was something that was going on before Kirk.
I was surprised. I mean, I just assumed the Enterprise did fight in the war. I was like, really? It didn't? Okay. I just assumed they were out there.
I guess what story point does it serve that they were not there, other than
they're not all traumatized and battle hardened and grimdark?
I guess that's it. That they kind of came back with a little like Pike, like it was tough for us to not be here, but presumably they maintained their general kind of optimism.
We didn't have to compromise our ethics and moral beliefs and stuff.
Right.
But we will get a non-canon version of that story later this year. They just announced they're releasing a novel. I believe it is called The Enterprise War. And it is about Pike and the Enterprise during the Federation Klingon War.
But you mean it's going to right out of the gates contradict this?
No, it's going to be they're not in the war. It's
It'll still be the 5-year
what they
mission
were doing.
Okay.
Instead. And there are some interesting stories you can tell with that, because you would be like, oh, Spock, apparently there's this mutineer, someone named Michael Burnham. Have you heard about this? And it's like, oh, yeah, it's my foster sister. There's a reason why I never mentioned her later.
I have to admit, I hadn't thought about that, but that would have been a conversation between Pike and Spock.
Oh, wait. One other thing about Pike. Is he a stand-in for Alex Kurtzman with some of the way he's talking? Is he talking to the audience where he mentions Lorca being the captain, but he's gone now. He betrayed you, and I promise not to do that. Is that kind of acknowledging Brian Fuller wasn't really working on Discovery? He was off trying to get American Gods up and running, and so he got fired. He betrayed Star Trek. Or he also says keep your expectations low and you won't be disappointed. Right before the really cringy comedic scene with Linus the Saurian sneezing on a guy.
I forgot he said that. He definitely his thing at the end could be interpreted on a very meta level. Let's ruffle some feathers.
That was the only place where I thought maybe they might have pushed their meta a skosh too far, because relative to the conversation the two of them have been having, it just felt really weird that we're going to go rustle some feathers and have some fun. And it's why would you say that unless you knew a camera and a bunch of concerned Trekkies were watching?
Yeah.
So...
But enough about Pike. Let's back off him a little bit and talk about another classic Star Trek character who is making his return to Star Trek, and that is Spock.
Right, or rather lack of Spock.
Well, we see him in flashbacks, and we hear Ethan Peck does perform in this. We hear his personal log.
There's baby Spock and Spock voice.
Yeah. But they're obviously going to build up to the reveal of Spock.
What they're going to do is a search for Spock.
Yes.
A season-long search for Spock is what it sounds like.
I have this feeling that they may cross paths with him before they get to the end of it.
Yeah, initially, I was thinking...
That's just a gut expectation.
Yeah. And initially I thought it would be something towards the end of the season, especially because it took them so long to announce who they had cast as Spock. But I'm thinking it might be sooner rather than later now.
Mid-season finale?
When they first show him as a kid, it's when they are introducing Sarek and Amanda, or maybe just Sarek. No, Sarek and Amanda are introducing Michael Burnham to Spock.
Yes.
Spock is distracted. He's playing with his little digital reader thing, or his
little art,
his virtual art program.
Art thing.
Yeah, and I was my first thought was that Spock, his angry response to her from creating a scary giant dragon, virtual dragon, and scaring her.
It looked like the Sur Snake from the animated series episode with the Aquans.
I was
where
wondering
they
if it
go
had a
underwater.
specific reference.
Oh, that's a deep
But
dive.
I'm a deep dive.
Because they're underwater. I
Yeah.
see what you did there.
I feel like since these dreams that we've been told about have been prophetic, and don't we find out it's from one of his dreams in it?
Right, because at the end he says, I've been drawing my nightmares again.
We're gonna see this thing before the season's out in the flesh, right?
I don't know.
I wonder if we will. I bet we will.
I hadn't thought of that.
But
I hadn't either, but I like it. That they just sneakily reveal the big bad in the first episode.
It could be. But yeah, I thought that he was a little. It felt like too emotional an outburst for him, and yet this is Spock at his youngest and feeling threatened by someone with his parents. But it did read a little big to me, maybe a little not quite like a Vulcan slam would be.
It was very like on the nose.
He also closed the door in her face. What did y'all think?
Young Spock?
Yeah.
I thought he was okay. The door slam was like, okay, I guess. I mean, maybe he just got beat up by all those other Vulcans today and really hates humans today. And he's real just, and it was just a bad day for him.
See, I kind of thought there was something deeper going on. I mean, the door slam, I guess that was the moment where he first meets her. But there's like a scene where he walks in and he sees her reading Alice in Wonderland to Michael. And I thought...
She's Amanda.
Amanda.
Reading.
Sorry, I should have named. Where Spock sees Amanda being a mother, sees this motherly affection towards Michael, and I thought there might actually be some jealousy going on.
Totally.
Because because in him being Vulcan, he's not allowed to have this emotional connection with his mother that this other human girl is getting.
These humans can openly do that, and he can't.
Right. It would be interesting if he had, notably made a point to kind of push away those sort of affections from his mother, only to see them and really want them.
Yeah, and they established that in Journey to Babel, where it's like one of my favorite moments in all of Star Trek, where Amanda, like in tears, it's like a great performance, and she's talking about how it was so sad watching her son, knowing that he wants to love you as his mother and be affectionate to you, and just watch him be restrained and not be able to do that, and how she was sad for her son, and and Spock obviously carried those feelings into adulthood. So yeah, seeing someone who can do what you your heart's desire, what you want to be doing, and just be openly affectionate with your mom. Yeah, of course that's going to make a little angsty Vulcan kid, who's already struggling with his emotions
and knows that Dad will judge him if he goes and gives Mom a hug.
Yeah.
So.
and I could totally see how, because not only will his parents judge him if he has these human emotions, but he's part human and she's fully human, and they are accepting of her humanity in a way they aren't of his.
I suspect Amanda's perfectly accepting of Spock's humanity, but Spock doesn't want to be that person on a conscious level because it will disappoint Daddy.
Well, speaking of disappointing Daddy, I thought that, and this really goes to Sarek's performance, portrayal throughout the first season and into this, is that he doesn't seem quite the harsh disciplinarian and logician that he is in Journey to Babel in the original series. He's sometimes even rather warm towards Burnham.
Yes.
He talked about wanting to see, he had hopes that she would teach Spock empathy. And that didn't quite necessarily always ring true of the character we will see. And how far ahead would that be, timeline-wise?
7 years.
Yeah.
At this point.
Although it did lead me to a weird pet theory about something that something else in the episode. The suggestion that Burnham tells him that she might be the reason that Spock isn't visiting with her.
Yeah, there's something that went on between them. She says, "Well, it's my fault that Spock and I don't talk anymore."
This hadn't even occurred to me, but I guess it's maybe out there. And my brother thought is did they have a romantic?
I heard someone say that the other day. I was like, no, this isn't Game of Thrones. I know they borrow influences from that show.
Right? Well, here's the thing. This could be A, Pon farr, and B, I don't think that they would go to that place either. But on a purely logical level, the only taboo against it would be a cultural one, which is just a purely abstract thing that would be easy for a Vulcan to say holds no merit if they had a connection at some point.
Yeah,
they're not genetically related.
I don't know. Given the way they set up their relationship, I have trouble imagining that they got together in a romance and then went back to being all kind of cool and hostile to each other.
My brother briefly suggested, and this was just a casual theory, I don't think it quite works, but like, what if Spock actually, one of the reasons he joined Starfleet was going after her? And Sarek, who maybe doesn't know about it right now, maybe she's repressed that, so mind melds haven't turned it up. When he finds out that Spock made such a wildly emotional, the most human of emotional decisions to change his whole career based on that could actually be what kind of turns him so harshly against his son's decision, which he seems otherwise accepting of in Burnham's role in Starfleet.
Yeah, I could see that.
Now, I kind of don't think they're going to do it because I don't think they want to get within a foot of incest.
Yeah,
well, but it's not incest because they're not genetically related, and that kind of occurred to me too. Where
it's just a little vibes, a little close.
Wondered if maybe it was a teenage Spock having his first ponfar and not knowing what to do because teenagers don't know what to do when they go through their first, puberty as it is. And I
think they could write it in such a way that yes, it isn't too squicky, and that
it's going to be squicky no matter what you do. No matter what you do, it's going to be.
Yeah, what I kind of like though is that Michael, like the anti-Michael Burnham crowd, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this show is ruining Spock."
There's an anti-Michael Burnham crowd.
Yeah.
It's new Star Trek. Since there's new, it's going to be haters. There's got to be haters for anything new. She's such a phenomenal
actress with a complex character. How can anybody hate her?
I actually, I'm with you. I'm really fond of. I call her Mickey B. Mickey B is a badass. Like. A lot of people accuse her of being a Mary Sue, but she's not like she's incredibly capable, but she still makes mistakes, and she still has a bunch of emotional baggage. Like by definition,
less of a Mary Sue than Kirk was.
Yeah, I was gonna say she doesn't seem like someone's fantasy because she's gone through a lot of dark things and everything. So no, she doesn't strike me as a Mary Sue at all. She strikes me as a complex character.
And the
actress is phenomenal. I mean, like, she really holds that character well, and it's really good that we have... I mean, she makes a wonderful and interesting protagonist.
Mm-hmm. We talked earlier about the difficulty with, was it Jeffrey Sinclair's original portrayal of Pike, and how that might have
Jeffrey
been...
Hunter.
Jeffrey Hunter, Mixing up my Babylon 5.
We're talking about Babylon 5 earlier. Yes. Sinclair is not in Star Trek.
Jeffrey Hunter's portrayal of...
Well, I'll save that for the Easter eggs.
Okay. He did have that sort of darkness about him, and Burnham did have she has a lot of angst to hold on to in season 1, and sometimes it's tough for fans sometimes I think to rally around a character that goes to those dark places, especially in Star Trek, when in a show where the people who were ready to react harshly to this were ready to react to anything that was grimdark, and there was some of that in the first season, and you've got some pretty vibrant characters in Stamets and Tilly. And even Lorca was a sort of, in his way, more kind of energetic and upbeat, if cynical, character. So I think it's hard to portray kind of as sometimes darkly serious character as a lead. And I do think, like, on some level, even I struggled with that a little bit, even though I really like Burnham. I can at least understand, I don't understand hating her. I understand, like, maybe not finding her as vibrant as some of the other crew members. And that's almost like any leader-type role on a show. Buffy experienced it, and
I was about to make a comparison.
Cyclops
to Buffy,
and the X-Men. It's sometimes those characters can end up feeling a little bit like they carry the dramatic weight of the show, but they don't get to always be the fun, energetic scenes. Anyway,
but so we talked about Pike. We talked about Spock. What about some of the other characters on the show? One of the things that I talked about really wanting to see this season was more from the secondary characters on the bridge, and they definitely go out of their way to address that.
They gave them names, and they got to speak this time. I noticed, like, all through the first season, we didn't know what their names were, and they didn't speak.
Well, they do mention their names, like, occasionally, but, like, it's super, like, it doesn't stand out. Like, they might say, like, Reese's name twice in the show, and I think Bryce, they say it one time, and...
But if you're not paying attention... They had that somewhat, I mean, I'm going to say contrived, but I don't mean it in a negative way. Pike asks them for their names. He's like, I want to know who I'm talking to or whatever. And they just, boom, reel it off. And it's a kind of energetic bonding scene. I really liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. It was it scriptish? Yes, but that's because Pike is deliberately trying to manipulate these people into a crew that will serve him, and he can help them. And
right?
He's trying. He was trying to bond. Team building.
It's a good character moment for Pike.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I thought it was, yes, it was scripted, but yes, that was in universe. It's supposed to be scripted.
And then not only that, but then they utilize some of those characters more when they do the big action sequence where they're taking the landing pods from the Discovery to the asteroid, and Detmer and Owasakin back on the bridge. They're like they're helping them navigate and remote controlling their thrusters on their suits and stuff like that. Like they kept them involved in what was going on more than really anywhere in season 1.
No. Right. It felt a little bit more like maybe kind of how they somewhat used the supporting cast of Star Trek, the original series, in the movies, when they started making them a little bit more vibrant.
And Dave, I know one of the things you wanted to see was the bridge become like, the magical place.
I want to see the crew gelling.
Yeah.
They totally did that. Yeah. Right out of the gates. So I really liked that, and I felt like the bridge, which hadn't been always a major source of the action in the first season of Disco, absolutely was in this one. A lot of stuff took place in science bays and I guess, or even sick bay or quarters or Lorca's ready room. But the bridge wasn't that big a thing in season 1. So, it just feels real tricky.
Yeah, well, I think Season 1 had a lot of people having private conversations. There was a lot of that, and that's not what you do on the bridge.
Right.
Except in old 60s Star Trek when Kirk would step aside with Spock and somehow nobody else was supposed to hear the little private conversations that they would have. But yeah, I think I also...
It was dramatically lit. Yeah, no one could possibly hear what they were saying with that lighting.
Well, I also wanted to say, I think they turned up the lights on the bridge a bit, which makes sense since Lorca with his eye problem isn't there anymore.
That's the same thing I thought. I was like, okay, we got rid of the weird mirror universe captain who wanted all the lights dark. So can we turn the lights up now?
Maybe a little lens flare. No.
There was definitely some lens flare. There was definitely lens flare. In fact, I did feel a lot like I was watching... like some sort of alternate universe version of Star Trek 2009, just in beats like, they put the brightly colored spacesuits on, they do the crazy folly thing, Pike is there taking charge and taking names and giving orders, and this Pike isn't a million years away from Bruce Greenwood's. I think the hit it line is actually Greenwood's, right?
He says punch it.
He said punch it.
They're like,
okay.
Real close.
Still close enough.
We can't do the exact same thing, so we gotta change it from punch it to hit it. But the look of the show, though, like I love that they have more color. Things are brighter. Yeah. And
I wish that he had not switched to their uniform, that they had switched to his Enterprise uniform.
That would be cool. But my personal theory about why they have the lens flare and the bright lights is, hey, it's like why people in Norway and Sweden actually bother to light their houses. When it's dark all the time, you get really depressed. So you need like a full spectrum natural lighting, and Starfleet is mindful, and maybe it's like an OSHA regulation.
I like it. I feel like Star Trek totally would be mindful.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, the cinematography is a big step up from season 1. The show has a very cinematic quality to it. I know, like, if you want to get like super filmmaking-y technical about it, I know, like, they switched to an anamorphic aspect ratio, and it looks really good. And the effects, the CGI is better than most anything you see on TV.
Oh, for $8 million an episode, it darn well better look good.
I think they've increased the budget.
Wow.
At least for this episode. But that's one of the things about why Aaron Harberts and Gretchen
It's a very
Byrne,
effectsy episode.
Why the showrunners at the beginning of season 2 got fired was because the two things that are reported was that, one, they were being mean to the writers that worked for them, and the other one being that they went way over budget. But yeah, definitely shows in this episode. It looks great.
But there was a tradition to maintain. Whoever wrote the first episode gets fired at the beginning of by the time the series is launched. We're going to see Kurtzman is going to be out at the beginning of season 3. Yeah.
Kurtzman has that 5-year contract now, so I don't think he's going anywhere.
He'll be okay as long as he doesn't write the first episode. But so.
I will say this: as good as it looked, the drop sequence in the little flyer ships, I didn't really care for.
So I thought it was well executed, but I would have preferred if they were just like on a single shuttlecraft, and they maybe have to do like some more badass flying maneuvers than typical.
Yeah,
and you could still have like some danger and some action. But yeah, this is clearly them like showing off their budget and like what's like the coolest thing we can do, the most exciting thing we can do. But that being said, like I thought it worked well.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was the asteroid belt is so crazy with the gravitational fluxes that we need our most maneuverable craft, and apparently that's these things.
right.
And they had a good explanation for why they existed when Burnham said, yeah, one time we had a mission where there was some similar gravitational anomalies, and we had to use these vehicles. I actually know how to fly it, so let's go.
I think what the only thing about it is that it didn't feel super Trekky to me. Like
like a shuttlecraft,
Twitch flight, that feels like a video game sequence where you got to like play it 10 times in a row to finally get through or more, and you get really frustrated and you throw down your controller. It felt a little too much like that for me, and Trek just usually doesn't kind of go to that kind of twitchy piloting style.
Yeah, that's why I would have just used the shuttlecraft, because
I felt like I was watching 2009 Star Trek. I was like, yep, that feels exactly like a sequence out of that franchise.
Well, this episode was directed by the guy who wrote that, so...
And I don't mean that in a bad way. In this particular context, I thought it worked fine.
Yeah, actually, the stuff that I felt that it drew on from that, from Bruce Greenwood to some of the kind of almost not quite walk and talk, but they had a lot of fast-paced dialogue in it. Most of the stuff they took from, or seemed to reflect 2009 Trek, I liked. Just that one sequence didn't do it much for me.
But that's another thing, is there is like a high-energy, fast-paced nature to this episode. It's an hour long. I think it's the longest Discovery episode. But it never really feels like it's dragging on. And it's very dense. Like, they pack a lot into it.
Yeah. And I thought almost every line was like pretty on the mark. I was like, nope, that's how I would have written it. That's how you generally when I'll like, no, that's not how it should have been written, and you should have said this and not that. I'm very picky on lines, and I was like, no, that's it. That's better than what I had.
The writers on Discovery are really big Star Trek canon loving, continuity loving people.
Yeah.
If you think about like how like the show is written, my good friend Starfleet Boy, who has been on Tex-Trek in the past, and I've appeared on his podcast, the Rogue Drunk Space Nine. But one thing that he brings up is that if Discovery was a radio drama, a lot of these complaints that people have about the canon issues, about like the aesthetics and stuff, like wouldn't exist. The way that the show is written, it's just like some of the production design that people have like a hard time seeing. Oh, how does that fit 10 years before Kirk and stuff like that? And I even have some issues like that. The two that really stood out to me in this episode was the turbolift thing, when we see like the inside of Discovery, and it's fucking huge.
Yeah, okay. That bugged me. That bugged me.
That really bugged. Like, is this the TARDIS? Is there like more space in there?
What scene bugged you? The inside of the turbolift?
Yeah,
they showed the turbolift car moving through the tracks, and there's this vast open canyon.
Oh, right.
It's like a roller coaster.
Is that another weird callback to 2009 Trek with its vast interiors and huge engines?
Well, they never quite did that turbolift thing, but yeah, you'd need a ship like the
they never
size
did
of it.
anything that annoying in 2009 Star Trek or any of the Kelvin movies. And also that gravity simulator at the end, it's like it's like a transformer. Like I want to hear like the transformer sound effect.
Right. I was thinking Gua'uld Tech from Stargate, which was all that flip flop, folds out and deploys. And they had the same with the helmets. I was like, clearly Starfleet made first contact with the Gua'uld and have assimilated their technology. Like suddenly we have all this flip flop, and fold out.
It kept growing. It was getting bigger and bigger. I was like, what? Am I watching like Fortress Maximus? Is he about to turn into like Autobot City?
It's a little, throughout the run of Discovery, they've periodically played with tech that doesn't seem quite traditionally Trek. Foremost in season 1, I think, was that there were holograms around, which in my head feels more Star Wars-y. Star Wars does it all the
But
time.
I can explain that, though. They had to abandon the hologram communication because it wasn't secure. And they didn't want, like, Romulan spying on them.
Right. You can explain it if you have to, but...
This gravity simulator is hard to explain.
Right. It didn't... It looked like it went from nothing to a lot of something. But continue.
They said, all right, Mr. CGI man, we need to have this machine come up that will catch the asteroid. And you have... $250,000 to do it. And they're like, well, I don't want to get fired. If for $250,000, it better do something pretty impressive.
Right, it can't just be a little platform.
No, it can't just be a machine that comes up on an elevator. No, it's got to be something worth $250,000. So that's I think that's.
I think your explanation is almost certainly the right one.
Yeah.
In my head canon, the explanation is that is like some advanced alien technology that they found somewhere and kept on the ship.
Sure.
Maybe Lorca, when he was like finding all those weird weapons he kept in his.
Disco was clearly playing around with some weird stuff. So
with the helmets, by the way, with how the helmets unfolded, which that stood out as something weird to me too, because in Star Trek they always just take the helmet off of the EV suit.
Yeah.
But we did see it malfunction when Pike couldn't get his helmet to come down.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why they stopped using those.
Yeah.
They don't work that great.
I will give them this. They do have a big enough backpack in the back that I guess you can imagine all those bits fold into that backpack in the back. So unlike
where's the oxygen go?
Well, they just have a reprocessor that strips the CO2 and back into O2.
Oh, that makes sense.
As long
Then
as
why did B'Elanna and Tom Paris almost run out of oxygen?
Because that only lasts as long as your battery does. When your battery runs out, then it stops stripping.
Yeah, but you got to be able to get. You would think with future tech you'd get a lot of hours. I mean, I just.
How many hours was it for B'Elanna and Tom Paris?
It was a while, but yeah, maybe like they didn't recharge the batteries since like the last mission.
Yeah,
you know, ever since Iron Man's armor started forming up on him in the movies and in the comic Extremis storyline, everybody's been doing that. I miss people putting on helmets. I really do. There's something cool, and it's either kind of cool in a soldiery way, or it's cool in like a medieval knights kind of way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like just on some basic instinctive level. I don't like armor that does that, or like environment suits.
See, I think it's kind of cool because, I mean, who wants to have to carry a helmet with them when they're walking?
It does seem
I do, because I look so cool when I put it on.
yeah, but then your hands aren't free to use tools and other things, and you can't leave that helmet or you die.
Yeah, but like people who ride bikes, people who ride motorcycles, like if they wear a helmet, they're always like stuck carrying their helmet around wherever they go. So
it's purely an aesthetics thing. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, like realistically, and the quasi-realism of Star Trek. They could be pushing a lot of technologies further. I still like them using communicators that they got to flip out, even though well before that timeline happens, we will probably have completely invisible communication that's Bluetoothy
Well,
stuff.
yeah, but are they going to have a range of 40,000 kilometers and transmit faster than the speed of light?
Yeah, just
because the effectiveness of a Starfleet communicator is a lot more impressive than, say, a sat phone. So.
But I bet they could have made that still more invisible had they wanted to in the Trek future. But I like the old school aesthetics. Obviously, it reflects 60s design sensibilities is the practical reason for it. Yeah. And I like the more physical stuff like that.
Well, enough about the helmets. Let's talk about Tig Notara's character of Jet Reno, who I think is one of the best. Was just with this one appearance, she's like one of the coolest Starfleet officers I've ever seen.
I would definitely like to see her again. I almost, as I saw her go, she has the makings of a good complex supervillain.
Okay.
Because she's like, playing around in an
mad
unconventional way, and mad scientist, and I love good unconventional mad scientists that have some bits about them that you can identify with, and they aren't just pure evil.
But she's clearly a good person. She
is a good person.
She stayed behind
until we find out that
Hiawatha
she's chopped up all those people.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
see, I wondered. But
that
I
would
just
break
thought it was
my
like
heart.
This isn't Galactica.
I just thought it as like, I could totally see her as like a Forbidden Planet style, like
Morbius, Dr. Morbius.
Yeah, and I mean, because the effects of being isolated that long, I could totally believe you start out as a good person with good intentions, but what happens when you're isolated from real human contact?
Do we know if she's going to be a recurring character?
So funny you say that. I was told by Mike Moody, who runs the... He's here in Austin, Texas. He runs the Star Trek Discovery podcast. With people that we know. He's with Grant Davis and Ashley Marino. They're really good. Y'all should totally check them out. But he informed me that Tig Notaro had posted on Twitter or Facebook somewhere that she is going to be in more episodes. I couldn't find that, so if it is not true, don't blame me. You blame Mike Moody at Star Trek Pod on Twitter. But
I can't see why they'd spend so much trouble introducing the character and then never have her show up again.
It would feel weird.
But I do remember something from the trailers with her in it that we don't see in this episode.
Yeah.
So it's either a deleted scene or there is more of her.
Yeah.
I would love her to be the chief engineer on Discovery.
Ooh, that could be interesting.
So, I think off mic
really
we talked about this a little bit. There was somebody else who the humor didn't land for. Some of her dry humor didn't land for me the way it does with say McCoy, who she resembles in that dry sarcasm a little bit.
I love her deadpan delivery, so it worked for me. The only humor that didn't work in this episode was Linus the Saurian, who's an asshole who sneezes on people. And I don't know how you can be in Starfleet and work with humans and not know... Yeah, sneezing on someone is one of the most rudest things I can do in an elevator with someone next to me.
Especially when you're infected.
Yeah.
Maybe shortly thereafter, he was locked up in the brig and sentenced to a lifetime in prison like Burnham.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, whoever watched this episode didn't know anything about infection protocols because I get that, what was it, Tellarite blood? Did I remember the species correctly?
Tellarite, yeah.
I get that their blood is different from humans, but it's still really weird to just see a doctor whose hands are covered in bodily fluid saying, here, let me
not
just
a doctor, it's an engineer.
But
it's just motor oil as far as...
Or if she's evil.
Pike has gloves on, he's wearing EV suits.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's true. I keep forgetting. Yeah, she's an engineer. She's been isolated.
She's had 10 months of nobody to talk to her, so her social skills have gone to shit.
Yeah,
I get the impression even before this, her social skills might have been a little dodgy.
Well, yeah.
Maybe the guy who sneezed, maybe his mucus is also a cleansing agent.
My explanation
It was
for that,
going around. That was what was particularly bad.
I think that Saurians don't sneeze very often, and so that was the first time he's ever sneezed, so he didn't know to cover his mouth or cover his nose.
But let's just be honest, it was a bit of slapstick that was a little bit goofy.
I know what was going on with that scene. They said, remember Keenser sneezing acid in Star Trek Beyond? We need an homage to that.
The other piece of humor that didn't work for me was with Saru's threat gangula, where he turns to the other guy and he's like, really, you're surprised?
Yeah.
That felt a little forced.
What was the deal with that?
When Detmer and Owasakin are talking about, oh yeah, this debris, turns out it explodes, and then Saru's gangula pop out.
Yeah.
And there's this guy on the bridge standing next to him who's staring at that, and Saru just turns around to him and he's like, oh really, you're surprised about my threat gangula?
Right.
I was like, well, that seems unnecessary.
Yeah.
But longest episode of Discovery ever, y'all really thought that needed to be included, gonna trim that out. But I still like Tilly, and she's kind of funny in here a little bit. I love that she actually called the ship Disco. That's canon now.
She's the Mary Sue. If you're talking about who's the Mary Sue, Tilly is clearly all of us Star Trek fans who want to be on the Enterprise and how we imagine that we really would be.
Or be on the Discovery.
To be on the Discovery, and how we imagine we'd really be if we got to be in Starfleet. So, and the fact that she's growing, she's the Mary Sue.
Yeah. Well, Mary Sue's usually are hyper competent, and Tilly has certain talents, that's for sure.
She's like Barclay becoming hyper competent.
Yeah, she's some sort of hybrid between Barclay and Wesley,
Yeah, she's not
less
there
annoying
yet.
than they are.
Yeah, totally. She had a few big scenes, but didn't command a ton of screen time. But I always liked the character, and I liked her minimal interactions with Stamets, who I'm not sure where they're going with.
Yeah, I don't think he's actually leaving, because they do talk about him leaving, but then at the end when they get the dark matter rock on board the ship, he seems that he
gets science hyped.
Yeah.
Oh, stick me some of that science, the good stuff.
Yep.
I don't think he's actually leaving. He's a main character. It's just how are we going to get him to stay?
Yeah, he's got his name in the opening credits. He's good.
He's
ain't
not
going nowhere.
leaving.
I think he's third billing. I think it goes Sonequa Martin Green, then Doug Jones, then Anthony Rapp.
All right.
The opening credits, they changed that a little bit, and I wish they had changed them more, because I want a complete overhaul of the opening credits. I don't like the weird earth tone color scheme, and...
I was surprised they kept the giant space flower thing trying to grab them.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, are we going to get to... I thought that was a reference to the space whale in the Harry Mudd episode, and I thought, are we going to get another space whale or something?
Yeah, it seems like they may be
Gormagander.
essentially keep the original one, phase in a few things, maybe each season phase in a few more, or something like that.
Yeah, and I kind of thought they would do that, but I'm surprised they didn't change more. They still kept the tether and the two hands reaching for each other,
Yeah.
and I wish they would have replaced it with some more stuff. I like seeing Captain Kirk's Enterprise captain's chair, but...
I heard that this season is going to have something of a science versus religion bent, and the hands reaching for each other is obviously God and Adam from the Leonardo da Vinci. I think wasn't he the one, or is that?
Although the hands reaching,
that was Leonardo.
Michelangelo.
Yeah, Michelangelo. Sorry,
Was it?
Yeah. I don't know much about real history, but
the hands were in season 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can kind of
just
see
take
why
on
they might
another-
say thematically that's still useful for us.
See, I always thought that was about Tyler and Burnham not being able to stay in their romantic relationship, and the last episode of Discovery being called "Will You Take My Hand?" That was the last episode of season 1. So it's kind of we can't stay together.
That's a tricky thing about symbolism. You can't quite pin it down.
It saves money to recycle.
But I have a feeling, their original notion with Disney's Fantasia, which fell apart, they only made 2 Fantasia movies, was that each one would keep some of the old, bring in some new. And presumably after a little while it would be almost all new, but they'd probably keep in Sorcerer's Apprentice or whatever. I wonder if they're essentially doing that with these credits, and so that by season 3 or 4 it'll be all new.
Well, I hope so. I would like it to be... I always say that Star Trek Voyager has the best opening credit sequence of any show, and Enterprise has the worst. So, Dave, don't fucking do it either. Don't sing the song. But
I don't know.
I like Enterprise's opening.
no, I hate it, but mainly because I hate the music. But Voyager is so cool. And all those beautiful shots of the Voyager going through nebulas and going over ice rings and down.
You don't
by
like the real
suns.
space history shown in the awesome Enterprise
See,
opening.
I like the opening credits to Enterprise. That's about all I like about that show. But I really liked the opening credits.
Here.
And I love that song, so...
you're going to get thrown out, Fatheree. You're going to get thrown out on the podcast.
Guess who's not going to be back on the podcast?
Oh,
Thanks, Holly.
Then someone else can edit this. But
Oh, is that a forbidden thing to say?
No, it's
good.
encouraged, in
Yeah.
fact.
we encourage infinite diversity and infinite combinations
Yes.
on Tex-Trek.
Even
And
if
it all
those
gets fixed in
combinations...
editing.
That's right. Even if sometimes those combinations are Fatheree's wrong ones.
Leave a comment and let us know how you feel about the Enterprise opening credits.
Has anybody ever thought about this before or formed an opinion on it? Do we want to just quick say what those new icons were in the opening sequence? Did we say that yet?
I don't have a full list, but they were things like the Starfleet badges, Captain Kirk's chair, and we
There's
will
a
talk about
transporter
that.
room underneath the pad underneath the
Well,
badges.
y'all paid a lot more attention than I did.
When we do our season 2 overview at the end of the season, we'll definitely break down everything that was changed in there.
Right, and see what we can now probably confirm what reflected what.
And just another thing that I want to bring up, a big thing I was hoping for would be better shots of the ships. Just
Right.
Give me the ship porn. I want to look at these beautiful...
Without the disco color lights all over it.
Yeah, I want to see these well-lit, beautifully designed John Eves starships. And I got so much of that in this one episode.
Yeah. No, the ships looked like Star Trek ships. I don't know if that's any more realistic than how they looked in season 1. But
The 3 tugboats that are tractoring the Enterprise away at the end, and they have that in the background as Burnham and Pike are having a conversation.
Yeah, it's on the view screen.
Yeah, well, it was a reflection in the window.
Oh, okay.
But I loved that, and I loved just at the beginning episode some of the shots of the Enterprise and how they linger on the Enterprise. Because that was a big thing I wanted in season 2. I want better looks at these starships.
The comparison we made was to the way they filmed the action scenes in the what's the action movie series? Spy movie. Matt Damon.
Mission Impossible, or The Bourne Identity.
Bourne Identity, yeah, where you have these really frenetic fight scenes, but you kind of can't follow the geography and the staging of it too closely. it's like sometimes you want the camera to pull back a little bit and really give you a sense of it. And since Trek has such a tradition of cool ship design,
I would say the coolest spaceships of any space franchise.
I agree. Any Galactica or B5 contenders?
There are some cool ships in Star Wars.
Yes.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I think the B5 with the rotating might be a little more realistic, but they don't look as cool.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah.
But I think we've covered a lot on this. Does anyone else have like a topic they're just like dying to get off their chest?
Well, how'd you guys feel about Burnham breaking into Spock's stuff in the? At the end?
Right.
Oh yeah,
Totally creepy.
I think it was. I mean, what I got from it is that probably it's a dramatic expedience. I think we're probably not supposed to reflect too much on the breaking and entering creepy part of it, and to just kind of accept it as this is just how they're moving the plot forward.
See,
it is a little clunky though, because it's hard not to think that it was creepy to just start reading his journals and stuff.
Yeah, and that's like the sacrifice of them doing like this high energy, fast pace, keep things going, keep things moving type of approach that does have a lot of advantages. But yeah, if we need something, explained away a little bit more, if they had established that they have reason to believe Spock is in danger, or if they had established that Pike wasn't okay with Burnham doing this, but she's like breaking the rules and doing it anyways.
See, right, because she knew something or another.
See, I actually, again, probably giving the writers too much credit, Pike conveys to me that, yeah, something's wrong with Spock, but as his captain, I was not able to do anything about it. If he asked for leave, I had to give him leave. And, but, yeah, why don't you go over to the ship? and the underneath it's like, you're his sister, I won't say anything if you don't say anything. You see if there's something we need to know, you find out. If it's not something we need to know, you're his sister, so you're the best we got.
That actually is a pretty good way of explaining that. And I wish that the writers had thought about that, because I'm not convinced that they did.
Did they? Is there an After Trek episode?
They don't. They canceled After Trek. After Trek. Now they're doing a Facebook Live with a guy from I think it's called the Kinda Funny YouTube show. They I don't know. It's something like kids watch where like weirdos play video games and talk. I shouldn't say weird. Like they seem like really cool people. Kind of
never
funny.
have anything to do with weirdos.
It's just like I'm not like one of these 12-year-olds that like get on YouTube and like watch people like live stream video games and stuff. But yeah, they have like one of those guys did like a red carpet thing that was live on Facebook, and they're gonna make that like a recurring thing that they do like right before the episode drops. Really weird because it was live.
They're showing the premiere, right?
Well, yeah, that's what they did this time, and they had Shazad Latif, who plays Tyler on Discovery, who didn't know that it was live, and he talked about how, I just saw all these other actors when I got back into LA, but I don't remember because I was really drunk and high on mushrooms. So now I kind of feel like I'm seeing them for the first time. And so like the kind of funny guys, like, we're live on Facebook.
He's just exploring the mycelial network.
Yes. He's getting into character.
But anything else that you feel like we need to cover, or should we just like move into Easter eggs and wrap her up?
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. I'm intrigued. I'm hooked.
The science versus faith thing is certainly a potent ground for stories. It seems a little weird at first to have people on Star Trek, especially the two Vulcans or raised by Vulcan people.
The not quite Vulcans.
Chasing after angels is a kind of a weird thing. And I sort of wish that maybe the red bursts had been described with a little bit more detail, although I know they don't really...
They can't scan it.
They tried to scan it, but I guess for something as big as that is, like they're like, we're going to like put a lot of effort into this for just something that they couldn't scan. But I guess they know it's something important that they couldn't scan.
They were literally just like red bursts. It's like these 7 big red things lit up and then went away.
Yeah.
And then when they tried to scan one, it shut their ship down.
They did say that something about like, because the odds were so against that, this happening everywhere, it clearly was some kind of unified thing, like a civilization and intelligence was behind it. It wasn't some
it was a
coincidence.
Non-natural.
But like I say, it feels a little bit like chasing after dreams and angels feels weird for Vulcans, but I think it's supposed to. So I'm on board to see where they're taking it.
I don't know. Wasn't there a pretty terrible Star Trek movie where there was a line like, "What does God need with a starship?" Something like that.
Well,
Maybe this is a chance to explore
the
those
characters who
themes
look
better.
slightly demonic are now chasing the things that look slightly
Yeah.
angelic.
That's true.
Symbolically, there's a certain resonance there.
And sometimes
Yeah,
I forget
that
the
works.
Vulcans have been around so long that, Spock was originally described as satanic, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they,
Yeah.
I think, use that in his character
that was
description?
Gene Roddenberry's original idea.
Yeah.
He wanted them to be red for a little bit, and he wanted them to be yellow because he didn't think he'd get away with red.
Yeah.
And it didn't look good on camera, so they stopped doing the yellow paint on the face. But so yeah, that's all we got. Just one last thing I want to say, and then I'll jump into the Easter eggs. I loved the Last Jedi style subversion of we think a red shirt is about to die. It's like, nope, it's the guy in the blue shirt who's being a dick to Burnham. That's what he does.
Yeah.
Actually, I will be thankful if they push away the red shirt in joke, just
But
because,
they did something cool with it. They twisted it around.
Right, no, I think this. I would say that's kind of an effort to do that, while still maybe get a little wink and a nudge towards it. I kind of,
Yeah.
I'm not wild about the in joke as far as I guess the meta version of it, where people are, there were people on the Enterprise Kirk didn't care about and would just send off to die or whatever. It's funny a few times, but I'm ready for them to kind of move away from that. So yes, I actually agree. It's funny. It was a good way to kind of acknowledge it.
It was kind of like some comic book writer said at one point that you can't just write Superman rescuing a cat out of a tree these days. If you do something like that, you're gonna have to put a weird twist on it.
Right. It's a commentary on something, or yeah.
But so I think we're just gonna go ahead and move into Easter eggs.
All right.
So that's the thing that we're gonna do this season is I'm gonna make a list of all the Easter eggs in the episode, and if there's anything that I missed, be sure to comment and point it out to me and let me know. But I'm just gonna run through these. As soon as Pike beams aboard, he mentions Mojave. He says that when he grew up in Mojave, he learned that the best way to get into a cold stream is just to jump right in. So that was something set up in the cage. It was that he lived at Mojave City, or something that looked like it might have been a terraform from the Mojave Desert with his horse Tango or Mango or whatever. We have a Geordie LaForge style visor on the transporter chief.
Oh,
Yep.
I did not notice that.
But they also added additional equipment to it. He's got a bunch of hardware on top of his head. So it's okay, this is a more primitive version. It might need more hardware to interface with his brain.
Mm-hmm.
There's a screen that displays Robert April's name, the original captain of the Enterprise that we know from the animated series. We have some classic Trek aliens being used. We have Linus the Saurian, that is an asshole who I hate. Jet Reno mentions a Bolian. The science officer Evan Connolly mentions he had a roommate who is part Cation. So Dave, I owe you an apology. Apparently, you say it Cation.
Yep.
But yeah,
Which is how I pronounced it. But you're like, no, you're all wrong.
Well, I always thought it was Katian, but Cation, who was Rest, the cat lady on the animated series.
Oh. I thought
Yeah, that
it
was a deep cut
Tahitian.
reference.
And the other one is a Barzan, the engineer Non from the Enterprise. That species was established on Next Generation in the episode The Price, I believe season 3, where there's the Barzan wormhole, and they're trying to negotiate for, and the Ferengi are trying to acquire the rights to the wormhole, and that species was the Barzan. They have little breathing things on the sides of their mouths.
Yeah.
So that was from the Next Generation. So that was another thing that me and Dave wanted, was to see more classic aliens.
Yep.
First episode, they're already giving it to us. The USS Hiawatha had the registry number NCC 815, which is probably a reference to the Flight 815 from Lost.
That's a kind of an odd one, but if they were taking something from Abrams's movie and he produced that show, I guess, is that the link?
I'm thinking, or I think maybe Alex Kurtzman worked on that.
Yeah,
So
just that could be, yeah, or just a little tip of the hat to his old Star Trek buddy.
And we also have the Lorca fortune cookie fortune that was left in the ready room.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
That was
it,
awesome.
Yeah.
it read, "Not every cage is a prison, not every loss is eternal," which is referencing both Pike's past and his future, from what we know happens to him.
Mhm.
We know that before this episode, he was in a cage, but he got out, and we know in the future he will have a loss where he gets paralyzed and stuck in a mechanical wheelchair that for some reason he can only communicate through binary. But that's not an eternal loss, because he will get to go live in an awesome fantasy world with this cute blonde chick, because Spock is a cool bro who takes care of his captain, his former captain.
Sends him off to holodeck sexcapades for the rest of his life.
Basically. So, that's a better ending to a story than Kirk got when a bridge falls on him in Star Trek Generations. And then Pike tells Burnham that Spock presented logic as the beginning of the picture and not the end. That is similar to something that Spock tells Lieutenant Valeris in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, when he tells her, logic is the beginning of wisdom, not the end. Yeah. And I kind of feel weird about them using that, because I always pictured that as something like Spock learned like in his older years in like Star Trek VI.
I did sort of assume that was something that came out of Star Trek, his experiences in Star Trek the Motion Picture, but...
Or yeah, like when he refuses to do go through with the complete the Kolinar, and then he does kind of become like a little bit more of an emotional older Spock.
I think he makes peace with himself by the end of that movie, and I kind of felt that tied in with that. But again, just fan theory.
And then Spock's quarters on the Enterprise was full of Easter eggs. It's located at Section 3F, which is where his quarters were located in the original series. They weirdly look a bit larger now than they looked on the original series.
A little spacious.
But
you know, when there's only 200 people on board, he's like, can I get the bigger cabin?
We just knock that wall out and I'll have, you know.
Well, yeah, it should be bigger now. Yeah, and then when they go up to 400 people, they have to, reduce the size of his room. But we see his Vulcan loot. We see the 3D chess set. We know that him and Kirk love playing 3D chess. And we see, the ceremonial bells from Amok Time.
I was wondering, had we seen those before at all? Because that seemed like a kind of a weird thing to keep around, because that's
he had
such a specific ritual.
He had those in his quarters on the original series.
Oh, okay.
So that's all I got with Easter eggs. So
I had two. One, I'm pretty sure that the idea of a medical frigate exists only in Star Wars before this point.
It's a weird terminology.
Yeah. A frigate is a military warship. The idea of attaching the word medical to it, I'm pretty sure is all...
They were fighting a war. Wouldn't they have a military warship for the military have a medical vessel? They were just fighting.
Yeah, but the terminology you would call, a frigate is an offensive warship.
It's like saying I have a hospital freighter. It's why would you just say a medical ship?
Yeah,
but it's because in Return of the Jedi there's a line that actually says
medical frigate.
Yeah. I mean, do you actually think that they were referencing that, or do you just think that maybe the terminology just kind of crept into their minds?
Oh yeah, I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but it seems to have it could have been just seeped in that's a thing that really exists now.
Concentrate all your fire on that Super Borg destroyer.
Yeah, yes, and the other thing that I'm pretty sure I'm just projecting is that Burnham, when she's got her leg all messed up and she's looking up and she sees this big angelic kind of figure of a savior, and then it dispels and out comes Pike walking towards her, and I remembered that Jeffrey Hunter played Jesus Christ, and I was like...
Yeah, Pike is Jesus!
Yes, Pike is Jesus!
Where did he play Jesus?
He was in a movie before he did Star Trek, before he did The Cage, I think. So... that was I'm pretty sure I'm just making that up in my head, but it made sense.
I like it.
Yeah.
I had a weird visual double take that I think I clearly missaw this since no one else has commented on it, and it would be kind of obvious. When you're seeing the various injured people that Tig Notaro, aka Jet Reno, is healing up, there's one that looked like they were wearing a Next Gen uniform to me. Where it looked like you had the top part that was the darker color, and there was a little comm badge there. I think it was just visually, there was probably a blanket or something on him. It just looked to me like Next Gen. It's like the third person you see when the camera's panning around.
Maybe someone from the future fell back in time.
Yeah, I was going to say, since time travel and none of that stuff is part of this, there would be no reason for it. But take a look at the scene and just see if you can spot the person.
That was an Easter egg.
It looked like it to me.
That's setting up the Picard show. We should make a video of the red circle with the arrow pointing at that.
We'll get into real deep conspiracy theory junk.
Yeah. But I think that's all we got on Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 1, Brother. but not to be confused with Brothers, the Next Generation episode with Data and Lore. Next week, we will be talking about episode 2 of season 2, New Eden. Not to be confused with The Way to Eden from the original series.
But there's been a lot of Star Trek episodes.
Yeah.
It's going to have a lot of titles.
When you after you've done like 700 titles of episodes, it's hard not to like double down but.
Well, that's where we get things like the lamb cries not, or the butcher cries not for the lamb or whatever.
Yeah.
We also have an episode called Emissary and an episode called The Emissary. But
There's a couple of first contacts out there, too.
yeah. We have a movie First Contact, we have a TV episode First Contact.
Are there any called The Enemy Within? Because that seems to be a popular name.
that is taken. It was one of the first episodes of Star Trek, so one of the first ones out the door.
Yeah.
Of all science fiction, they love that title.
Yes.
But yeah, so next week we'll be talking about New Eden, directed by, have you ever heard of some guy called Jonathan Frakes or Frakes or something like that?
I'd have
some
to Google
TV
him.
director. Yeah,
I feel like
don't
he
know.
might have been like some kind of guest star on Star Trek. Actually.
Okay, yeah,
I
so...
thought he did things with alien autopsies or something.
Oh, no, I know who he is. He used to host that show, Fact or Fiction, on Fox.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, so that guy...
What a great find.
Yeah, so I'm glad he's still getting work in Hollywood. So directed by Jonathan Frakes. So yeah, be sure to check that out. We're doing these every week on Sunday nights. And as always, like, subscribe, let us know what you think and any continuity discrepancies that you pick up on in Discovery. Help me keep a list of those, because when we do our Season 2 wrap-up at the end of the season, I'm going to attempt to explain all of them away. So we'll see how well I do at that. But yeah, so we're going to sign off. So until next week, live long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter, @TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.